building on a theme of yesterday's vlog, in particular regarding the unimportance of quality and the importance of iteration and moving faster rather than trying to slow down and achieve some sort of a production value that who knows if it has any permanent value or not. Something else that I wanted to bring up on that's really important to me is the fact that I'm really an interesting case study of that thesis, because in many ways I'm not, or I wasn't well suited for, you know, kind of a visual effort like this at all. Like in particular, it's just a thing of mine that I actually have a speech impediment, or I don't know, kind of had it and may always have it, or may never necessarily permanently have it, and it's not always visible or audible or whatever, but you know, it's always there, a little bit of a stutter that really is not more than a little bit. It's been a bit of a barrier in my life in many ways. It's channeled my life towards less speaking roles, less speaking positions in life, and you know, it pushed me over the last 20 years now into a more of an introvert role. It made me more of a library dweller, and so I got into philosophy and I got into books and reading and the classics, and you know, computer science stuff and business, etc., etc., etc. But all that stems from the speech impediment that made it difficult to speak and difficult to partake in, you know, like being a salesman or a showman or whatever, an orator or whatever. And now what I'm doing is I'm trying to do this recording thing, this video thing, and that's a lot of speaking, a lot of enunciation, a lot of elocution, and I'm putting in an effort that I've never had to before, in a good way, to fix that. And the real interesting challenge is if someone like me can ever break through that glass ceiling of sorts and that barrier and just act and achieve a place that someone that doesn't have such an impediment would achieve. That's the real interesting question moving into the next 20 years, whether if I struggle to overcome this impediment, you know, 20 years ago, I could have, and maybe if I did that, then a lot of things would be different. So we'll see, you know, like maybe you can hear me struggle a little bit with my voice, maybe not. And you know, these recordings are going to be one struggle after another. Every time I come out to record, I struggle. I legitimately struggle, and it's not easy by any means at all. It's very difficult, but it's what has to be done, and I'm not afraid of putting myself out there. That's going back to the theme of what I started with. If I was afraid of the production value not being amazing, I wouldn't have been able to come out and say something without having that perfect voice. But I'm not afraid of that. I don't think it's important. I think the substance matters. I think the intent matters. And based on that thesis, I'm permitted, and I'm permitting myself to do a lot more than I would have otherwise. But if I'm permitted, then that gives me the green light to go forward and actually ramp up the speed. And the question now is, if I have the green light, can I ramp up to speed to that level where I didn't have an impediment? And what would I need to do? Exercises and practices and things to overcome and compensate for the impediment. You know, these are the things that I wrestle with. These are the things that I ask myself all the time. But it's an example of having a setback and not having that be relevant or matter in your life. One of the hardest things for me in reference to the speech issue that I mentioned last time, earlier today, was, as you can see, I'm trying to really follow my challenge of recording every single time I'm walking somewhere. And so might as well now do multiple videos a day and stitch them together into a narrative that makes sense to me. But yeah, building on the point of earlier today with speech and not being too fancy about the externals and letting that work itself out. Nevertheless, I do want to improve that, and I don't want to just leave that aspect of my delivery suffer from being imperfect. I am a perfectionist in a big way. Whether it's a vice or a virtue, I don't know, but it is a big part of me to try to perfect everything that I'm involved with, including, this little piece of my life, namely my delivery and my speech. Okay, so that is something I am concerned about, and I'm trying to improve. But yeah, it's a serious challenge to me, especially when there's anxiety, right? When something isn't working as well as it's supposed to be, when events are out of my control, or I'm losing my grasp of whatever the issue might be, or if I have to speak faster, and a lot of my trained control around this goes away, and I start to slip, and I start to stutter, and it just gets bad, and I get uncomfortable with it. And one of my goals with the video is actually to make sure this gets less and less, and perhaps even goes away. For example, one difficulty that I thought would be a major obstacle, let me just cross the road without getting killed over here. One major obstacle that I was sure was going to be a thing, and wasn't, and isn't actually, is this whole video recording thing. I thought this would be super awkward, and after in the beginning it was, right, for the first video or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 10, it was weird. But it's just a matter of habit, chipping away, sculpting the water, polishing the stone, just putting in the grind, putting in the effort. Does pay off, and lo and behold, look, like I'm absolutely unfazed now. Could be walking through a busy street and I have a freaking phone in my hand, and it looks weird, looks silly, and I'm looking at my own face. That's super silly. That's super uncomfortable. Who does that, right? I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to the face, talking to the camera, with holding this phone, walking through the street. It's the most awkward, unnatural thing that I could have thought. And yet, 20 plus episodes, that's all it took. I was committed to a year. I was committed, and I still am committed to a year of recording this without letting anybody know what I'm doing. I'll mention this maybe in the next video. Maybe tomorrow I'll do a series on this, on the strategy of how I overcome the seemingly impossible, unreachable goals within my context. They become reachable, and I use the strategy that I'll talk about next time. But I've been committed to a year of absolute slaughter and disaster, crashing and burning, sounding horrible, looking awful, feeling super awkward for a year. 365 days, torture, brutal embarrassment, and I don't know, 3 months later, I'm okay. I'm okay. And so this whole visual thing is not a problem anymore, and that just not only reinforces the thesis of the chipping away and the patience that can wear down mountains and seemingly impossible obstacles, but it feeds into my, I don't want to get killed again, feeds into my prior point about speech, and that is something that I'm chipping away as well. I just want to stress myself, pressure myself to sound better, put myself on notice that I have to execute at the highest level every single time, every single time, every single time. And you put in enough of that, and something may happen.
That is my firm belief. Whatever that is, the result will have to play itself out, given enough time. It's playing itself out with video already, and I knew that voice would be much more difficult. It still is, believe it or not. I don't know if you can hear anything, but there's a struggle in my voice, and there has been for the duration of this video. So there you go. Validation and proof is in the pudding. It's in the bits, but my dedication to succeed in this is also in the bits. Both the failure and the success are in the bits, and only the success is allowed to prevail. So we will overcome this audio thing, and we will get through the uncomfortableness of the stutter. The stutter will not be there. The stutter will be fixed. Elocution will be incredible. I will become precise, and I will overcome that limitation, God willing.
So, okay, let me tell you.
And when this is looked back on a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, whenever that is, and hopefully I've already succeeded by then at that goal, at this goal, then this is the video that you will go to and you will say, here, he didn't have it conquered. He did not have it completed. He did not have the journey finished. He was only starting it. He had no proof of success. He had no certainty of victory. You don't just declare war on your function of your body or the malfunction of your body and expect that to just go away easily. So I can have the bravado all I want, but the proof is going to be not in today, in my macho bravado today, boasting about success. That's not at all what's going to matter. The proof is going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Will I be speaking in a crisp and clear voice or not? And if I'm not, then I've failed. Plain and simple, period, end of story. And if I am crisp and clear, then this video was not for nothing. And it's a good reminder